It was the craziest thing ever. And he literally sings the whole song start to finish. And when it ends and it's silence, he just goes, "How was that?"
Welcome to Get to the Hook. I am your co-host, Charles Latibeaudiere.
And I'm your co-host, Eric Colley.
So today, the day we are recording this, we're going to get to the hook, which everyone is talking about on June 25th. This marks the 15th anniversary of the death of Michael Jackson, a story that we broke here at TMZ. So obviously we are very familiar with all the details of that day and what it was like covering that, breaking that story. We're not going to get into that today because we have covered it before. And to be honest, there are a few places where you can, if you want those details, you can get that on our sister podcast, Last Days. They actually have a two-part episode that is out right now covering Michael Jackson. And also, there is a documentary we put together called TMZ Investigates Who Really Killed Michael Jackson that is streaming on Hulu. Instead, what we're going to do here on Get to the Hook is we're going to talk about a record from Michael Jackson's catalog that Eric and I have referenced on other episodes that we both find pretty perplexing. I mean, Michael Jackson has incredible hits, of course, as we all know, but this one has always befuddled me because of all his songs. If there was one that you just picked on paper that you would say, well, that was definitely number one, it would have to be the song where he teamed up with his sister, Janet Jackson, and they, in 1995, put out the song Scream, which...
It debuted at number 5. It was a hit, but it was not a number 1 song. And you would think in 95, Michael and Janet on a song would be guaranteed. The video had so much hype. It was the most expensive video ever made. And it's a great song. This is a little bit of Scream.
We're such illusions, don't it make you wanna scream? Get back your music, stick them hot in the scheme.
And that song came out in 95, in the spring of that year. It was a very significant moment in Michael Jackson's life and history. A lot of things were going on, and this was his first new single after, the first allegations against him.
Yeah, they'd come out in 93.
Yeah, so it was a very important song in that moment in time and for his whole legacy, I think. And today, on the anniversary of his death, we want to look at his legacy. But with that song in particular, we have an expert to speak to.
Yes, we are honored to have one of the co-writers of that song,
co-producers,
the co-producer of that song, a legend in his own right. And we could honestly do an episode with Jimmy Jam talking about his career and Terry Lewis, his career as amazing producers, 5-time Grammy winners, 16 number 1 hits on Billboard, 26 number 1 hits on Billboard's R&B chart. These guys have done it all, and I am thrilled to say that Jimmy Jam is joining us now. And Jimmy, welcome to Get to the Hook. We really appreciate you being with us.
Thanks. Nice to be with you guys.
Listen, I just want to say before we get started, and the reason, obviously, you heard us talking about Scream, and that's what we primarily want to talk to you about, but we're going to get into all sorts of stuff with you. Before we begin, I have to say that this is, as a kid from New York, and I moved to LA, start working in this business, and the day that I got home and I said to my wife, and I said, I met Jimmy Jam today. And she's like, what? And I go, this is one of those moments where you go, what is my life? Because Jimmy, I've been listening to your hits since the early 80s. Even before I knew who you were, I was dancing to the songs that you were producing. And so to have met you and to now have this chance to speak to you about this song is really incredible for me. So that's my little shtick there. But I had to say that because it's one of those moments where you pinch yourself and you go, what is my life? How am I here?
We are both geeking out right now. I'm going to be, we're being all cool and professional, but like I said, no pun intended, I am screaming inside right now. I'm like, oh my God, it's Jimmy Jam.
So Jimmy, all right, we're done being geeks.
Yeah.
We're going to be professional.
It might come back up again, though.
Yeah.
Get to the hook.
We're going to get to the hook. Exactly. See, I like that. So tell us about in 95, like as Eric said, a very important song for Michael, and the fact that obviously you and Terry had been working with Janet and had enormous success at that point. and they turned to you and said, we need a hit. Tell us how this came together and about that day recording it.
So the story really is that we got a call. I can't remember who called. It wasn't Michael himself, but it was somebody maybe representing him. And they just called and said, you know, Michael would be interested in doing a song. He'd like to do a duet with his sister and would like for you guys to produce it. And so our first call, I remember after that, was to Janet to go, hey, do you know about this? Are you familiar with this? And she said, yes. She said, he mentioned it to me. I said, okay, are you cool with it? And she said, oh, yeah, no, I'm fine with it. And I said, okay, cool. Because we, you know, Janet's our girl. And it was like, we didn't want to feel like we were infringing or, you know, we didn't want it to be weird in any way. And she said, no, it's great. She said, he says it's a duet, but she said, I feel more like I'm just guesting on his record. She said, in my mind, it's his record. So we said, okay, cool. So I remember then we started, you know, we said, well, how do you want to go about doing it? And he said, just make a bunch of tracks and I'll listen to them and then we'll just pick the track that we want to use. So, okay, cool. So that's pretty simple. So when we started working on tracks, I remember we had Janet come up. We were working in Minneapolis at the time. And I said, can you come up to Minneapolis just for inspiration? You know, we just like having you in the room when we're writing, because that's the way we would always write with her. And she said, okay, cool. So she comes up. And I remember we came up with probably 6 or 7 different tracks that we all thought could work potentially. And the 2 that we really landed on was, one of them became Scream. And she said, that's the one my brother's going to like. And we said, how do you know? And she said, because I know my brother. I said, okay, cool, right? So then the other song was, she said, I hope he doesn't pick this song. And that song ended up becoming Runaway.
Wow.
Which was her song, because she wanted that for herself. She said, I like this track. I want this for myself. So anyway, we go to New York, Hit Factory Studios. Michael has brought in his own speakers to listen to, like huge speakers, like bigger than the speakers that are already at the studio, which is crazy. And I remember we put the songs on, and he's very quiet and very kind of mild-mannered. And he comes in and he's like, okay, we're just going to listen to the songs and we'll see which one we like. Thank you guys so much. You know, and then he blasts it like on, forget 10, forget 11, like on 15, just like blasting these songs. We're like, oh, wow. So when he plays like all 6 songs. And then he goes, okay, can we hear number 2 and number 5? And those 2 are It's Scream and what became Runaway. So now Janet's looking like, uh-oh, you know. And so anyway, we play the 2 songs. And then he goes, I think we'll go with number 2. And Janet's so happy because that's the one that ended up becoming Scream. So now the next day we go to his penthouse apartment, and he's already in his mind. He's already got the lyric. He's got the subject matter of the song. He knew exactly what he wanted it to be. And so he comes in, you know, tired of injustice, I'm tired of the scheme. And he starts doing it. And Janet, I remember, is like on her computer or whatever, just trying to like write it down. Okay, wait, tired of the scheme. Wait, what are you doing? And she's writing it down. So then when we did that, we then had to then come up with a verse for Janet to do. And it made sense and all of that. So anyway, once we got the song written, Michael kept saying, we would go back a couple more days and Michael would go, are you sure it's done? And we said, oh, it's done. Let's go. Let's go. And he goes, we really have to challenge ourselves to make sure that it's, and it's like, yeah, no, it's ready to go. Let's go. So we finally go to the studio and Michael walks in and he's, you know, breaking every studio rule. Like he's wearing, I think, hard shoes, right? You don't want to do that because you don't want sounds, right, to get on the tape. You don't, you know, he's wearing like some sort of jangly type stuff, like breaking all the rules, right? And he walks in very mild-mannered and he just goes, and the plan is, by the way, he's going to do his vocal and then Janet's going to follow and do her vocal. So he walks in very calm and he goes, okay, just maybe run the track and let me get the headphones right and let me run the track. And as soon as the engineer presses play, Michael turns, and I always call it the Tasmanian devil. Like he turns, he starts spinning and whooping and hollering. And Terry and I are sitting at the soundboard like girls. We're like, oh, like it was the craziest thing ever. And he literally sings the whole song start to finish. And when it ends and it's silence, he just goes, "How was that?"
What did you say?
Well, after we picked our jaws up off the floor, we said, "Yeah, Mike, that was good. That was good." And then he goes, "Do you want me to do it again?" "Yeah, Mike, yeah, go ahead and do it again." Janet's sitting between us. She leans between us and she just goes, "I'll do my vocal in Minneapolis."
she wasn't going to get up there and compete.
Of following that.
Right.
And so Michael goes back in. He literally does maybe 2 more takes. And we have everything we need, you know. And we said, "Oh, that's great. That's great." So he comes in and he goes, "Okay, great. Okay, Jan, are you going to go in and do your vocal now?" And Jan's like, "Michael, my voice is a little scratchy today. I think I'll do my vocal in Minneapolis." And he said, "Okay, cool." So then I remember we go to Minneapolis. Janet does her vocal, kills it. We send it to Michael. Michael goes, "Janet's vocal sounds really good." I said, "Yeah, came out really good." And he said, "Yeah, where'd you record that?" We said, "Minneapolis." He said, "I'm coming to Minneapolis." So the competitive, you know.
So wait, he wanted to redo his vocal?
Yes, because he liked the way her sounded. And he's competitive. I mean, he was super competitive dude. So he was like, "No, I want to do my vocal better." We ended up he did come to Minneapolis, which was great. We might have used maybe 10% of what he did in Minneapolis, or all of it came from the original session, because that was the one. But it showed a lot about just his competitiveness, his desire to just be the best. And it wasn't at the expense of Janet. It wasn't that he was trying to outdo his sister. It was just like he wanted it to be the best that it could possibly be. And that standard of excellence that he set, to me, was very inspiring, because it made you feel like you want to really do your best work with him. You know, whatever you come up with, you want it to be absolutely the best you can possibly do. And I think all the people around him always felt that from him.
You know,
cool.
You said something, Jimmy. You were describing like the excitement that you and Terry had once you saw him start, you know, when he turned it on. And I'm just wondering, even for you guys, as successful as you were at that point and all of the accolades and #1 hits you had at that point, what, going into it, were you the least bit intimidated? What was the feeling like, but that first day you're getting in the studio with Michael? And I would imagine that over the years, Janet had probably said some stuff to you about how Michael is in the studio, but were you nervous to go in and record with him?
I don't know whether nervous would be the word I'd use, although there's nothing wrong with being nervous, because it just means you care, to me, about what you're doing. So I don't have a problem with the word nervous. I think we were anxious would probably be more, because I think we were more nervous about whether he was going to like the tracks that we did. And once he liked what we had done, then to me, I think a lot of the pressure that we felt probably had gone away at that point. And also the fact that Janet liked the tracks that we did. So I think we kind of felt good about that. Going in the studio with him, we just had no idea what to really expect. And then we were so blown away in the moment of hearing him sing and feeling his energy that I don't think any nerves we had at that point were gone. It was just like, wow. But it's the most impactful, when I just think about a session, it's the most impactful session that I think we've ever been a part of. And certainly at that point had ever been a part of, but probably to this day have ever been a part of.
Well, I have to ask quickly, you said you presented him with 6 songs. One became Runaway, one became Scream. What happened to the other 4?
One became Tabloid Junkie.
Oh, wow.
One became History. One became Is It Scary? And one never got used, if I remember correctly.
So it's still out there.
Yeah.
So
they all
writing.
They all ended up getting used. Everything on that initial, I don't even remember whether it was a DAT or a cassette. It wasn't a CD. I think it was a cassette or a DAT back in that day. But yeah, everything eventually ended up getting used. And then the relationship was then, he enjoyed the relationship. And that's why we ended up doing a bunch of things on the History album, even besides the ones that were on like Too Bad, we were part of that record and some of the other records. So I think there was a sense of trust that we got with each other and enjoyed working together.
Were there any when Michael called you guys and said that, you know, he wanted to work with you and you came up with these tracks, were there any words he used to describe, like, did he say, I want something like, or did you guys just, because the thing I love about the track that ended up becoming Scream, and I don't know if you knew that's why I'm wondering if he told you what the lyrics were gonna be about, because what I love about the track is, like, it's funky, which you guys, everything you do has that element, but it's also, like, it's aggressive in a way. I know part of the aggression comes from his lyrics, but when I just hear the music, it's so funky, yet it's like you can dance.
And one of the cool things, and was this your idea? And some people don't even notice this in Scream, on the snares, the glass breaking sound effect. Was that your idea?
Yeah. So what we knew was that Michael loved the knowledge on Janet's album. Well, he loved really the whole Rhythm Nation album. Like, it really was, like, I don't know that I'd say it was a life-changing album for him, but I think conceptually, if you listen to a lot of the records he did after that point, they all had elements of that sonic in it. And one of the sonics was glass breaking. And so we were very intentional in the kind of sonic, palette that we tried to give him, where we knew he liked those records and he loved to dance to. The Knowledge was like his favorite record to just dance to. So it was like, let's give him something that has that kind of feel. But lyrically, no, we did not know where lyrically he wanted to go. We just knew that we liked the aggression and the type of dancing, and that we knew that should be part of the track.
Was there an assumption, since it was with Janet, and, you know, we, as the public, we were all dying to hear Michael and Janet do a song together at that point, was it just a given that it was going to be the lead single from History?
I think it was, but I have, my theory on, the record was that I didn't think it should have been the lead single, honestly.
Really?
He was involved at that point in time. He had gotten married to Lisa Marie, and he was, to me, Scream was kind of leftover frustration from things that had taken place. And his new life was one of love and caring. And I remember my wife, who was with me when we did the session, and Lisa Marie was there. My wife's name is Lisa also. And I remember she asked Lisa Marie, what attracted you to Michael? And she said, he was the most kind person I'd ever met. And I remember when she said that, and I thought, yes, I totally see that kindness that he had and that compassion that he had totally was attractive. Like, it was great. And I thought, in that energy, I loved at the time, of course, controversial now, I loved the R. Kelly track, You Are Not Alone. And if I was running Sony Records at the time, which I wasn't, obviously, and still not, I would have gone with that as the single, because to me, the anger and the other stuff, okay, yes, that is part of it. But to me, people, I think, I won't say they had forgotten about what had gone on, but I think they were ready to move on. And so I think when people are ready to move on, let them move on. And that would have been the way I would have gone. And, You Are Not Alone was a #1 single, because I think it was more what people wanted to hear. It was a great record, but I think it was what people wanted to hear. And I think coming out with the anger was not the way I would have gone. And both Terry and I expressed that to Sony. We said, it doesn't need to be the first single. I know that's what you're thinking. And I know we're in a bigger type of environment where the bigger, but we didn't feel organically it was the right way to go, just because we knew where he was in his life at that point.
Right.
And he wasn't at that point in life. He was in a very loving relationship at the time. And that to me should have been what it was. It's
Well-
kind of, by the way, it's kind of like with That's the Way Love Goes and If, the label wanted If to be the single because it was the big dance aggressive record. And we were like, no, that's leftover. That's like leftover from the Rhythm Nation vibe. We're on a new vibe now. And That's the Way Love Goes is the way to go. And luckily we were able to convince, with some help from Chuck D, by the way, we were able to convince Janet that That's the Way Love Goes is the way to come out. It's not to come out bigger and bigger and bigger, but it's almost to tone it down, make it more human and loving, because that's what the album is.
Well, history supports what you and Terry wanted to do, because as you mentioned that You Were Not Alone went on to debut, right?
First song in history to debut at #1.
First song in history to debut at #1. So let's go back to Scream for a moment, because I'm curious what we've talked about it on the show. It debuts at #5, which at that point Eric
was a record at that time.
Right.
Matched the next week by the Notorious B.I.G.
Right.
Yep.
So it debuts at #5, but then doesn't go any higher. And what has always been, like I said at the start of the show, if you look at it on paper, you go, well, this song definitely went to #1 because it's Janet at the height of her powers with Michael Jackson. Has to be #1. I know you guys you probably don't think this when you're producing the song because you don't want to jinx anything. But you think, come on paper, we got a #1, especially after you hear them record it. This is definitely going to be a #1. And it just stalls out at 5. Do you have any theories as to why that was? And maybe is it the aggression thing that what you were just referring to?
I think that's part of it. The other thing is we had been around long enough to realize that there were songs that we had put out that we felt very confident about. Not that they're going to go #1, but that they're going to do really well, and they didn't. And there were songs that we really didn't think anything of. They ended up being huge records. I mean, probably one of our biggest records ever, Saturday Love, was I'll tell you how much we thought about that song. We never did a second verse on that song. If you listen to that song, the verse Sherelle sings and the verse that Alexander O'Neal sing are the same lyrics. Because we never even got around to doing a second verse. It was like, oh, we got to get this done. Okay, let's just have her sing this, have him sing the same thing she just sang. Okay, cool. And that's what we did. Okay. So we had no idea until the record came out. And then the first single came out, didn't really do a whole lot. And we said, well, what's happening with the single? And they said, oh, everybody switched to the other one. We said, what's the other one? They said, Saturday Love. And we said, huh? They did? So
You're like, it's like someone took your incomplete homework and they turned that in. You're like, wait, what are you doing? That wasn't it.
Exactly. So anyway, so using that as the basis, we knew we weren't a guaranteed #1. I think that's probably what people thought. We never really thought that. We felt very good about the record, but we did feel, as I said earlier, we didn't feel like that was the way to lead the next chapter of what's going to be the next chapter of Michael's, recording life. And I don't know whether people felt the same way about that. It's tough to say. And I don't know I don't remember the other records that were surrounding it, but I do remember One More Chance coming out and just being just an amazingly phenomenal record.
Yeah.
I mean, what a beautiful record that was. I also don't think, and you might know this better than me because I can't remember, was the video done when the single came out, or was it afterwards?
For Scream?
Yeah.
I think they premiered, I want to say around the same time, because I remember just all that hype about the video.
Right.
Yeah, there was a bunch of hype on the video.
Right. To your point, Jimmy, about everything just being bigger and bigger, I mean, a $7 million budget for a music video, clearly the label said, nope, we're going big. Don't worry about it, Jimmy, Terry. We hear what you're saying, but we've got the $7 million video, so we're going with this one first.
But by the way, the thing about the video, the reason it was $7 million, I think it was supposed to be $3 million. And basically they were going to spend $1 million a day. And it started off to be a 3-day video, I think. And it turned into a 7-day video. And so that's why it ended up costing so much money. I think, was because it took a lot longer to do.
Can you imagine
But-
the head of the label is just going like, wait, what day are they on? Day 5, day 6.
That was a long week.
Trust me, they were okay. You
Yeah.
know, they were okay because, you know, it's funny when you think about the economics of records. I remember back when we were negotiating to do Rhythm Nation, the follow-up to Control with Janet, and I remember Clarence Avant, the Black Godfather,
Yeah.
he negotiated
R.I.P.
our deal. Okay, and he went into Jerry Moss and he said, "Give these guys $1 million." And Jerry Moss was like, $1 million? He said, "Yeah." He said, "How many records did Control sell?" And he said, "I don't know, 6 million records." He said, "Okay, $10 a pop, that's 60 million. You guys just made $60 million. You just grossed $60 million on an album. You can't find $1 million for these guys?" And literally the deal was done the next day. So when you look at it with those kinds of economics, and even the deal that Janet signed after that with Virgin, which I think was $40 million or something like that.
It was the biggest of all time at the time, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was huge. But the thing was, whatever that number was, I remember the Janet album sold like 10 million. And so that's $100 million. So even if they gave her 40 or 80 million, they've already made their money back and she's got 2 more albums to go. So trust me, the 7 million, why it sounds like a lot, and it is a lot.
For a music video, yeah.
For a music video, yes. But that was the day when still the music video was really, that was the thing that got the excitement, got the thing. And also Mark Romanek, who directed the video, genius. Absolutely a genius.
Yeah.
So yeah. And it was great being on the set for that video because I was kind of like Switzerland. Janet had her camp of people. Michael had his camp of people. And literally I'd be sitting in Janet's trailer and then they'd say, "Michael wants you in his trailer." Okay. And then I'd go over to his trailer and then "Oh, Janet wants you in her trailer." Okay. And I literally was going back and forth. It was the craziest thing ever, but it was wonderful to watch it come together.
Yeah. I imagine people think, people want to create the gossip of like, oh, they didn't like each other or something because they were competitive on that set. But like you said, they were just 2 very competitive people because you don't get to that level without being incredibly competitive. I think they just each want to be better than the other just because.
I think there's that. And I also think too, though, they're not doing it alone. So there's a relationship they have with each other, right? But then there's the relationships that the camp has. So you have wardrobe people, you have choreographers, you have everybody else, right? So you had Michael's choreographer and Janet's choreographer that had to come together, who are both trying to do the best thing. But as producers, the thing we realized was, and Janet made it easy for us because we're looking out. I mean, we want to make a great record, but we're always looking out for Janet. Like Janet's our girl. And I remember at one point we had turned in a mix and we said, we have to do the vocals because we do the vocals with Janet. We have to do the vocals. And I remember they did a mix that I think Michael's engineer did. And I remember I called Michael and I said, "Who did these vocals?" And he said, "Oh, my guy did them." I said, No. I said, "We have to do the vocals on Janet. You can mix it however you want, but we have to do it because that's our girl. We know how to get the vocal the way we want it to sound." So there was those kinds of things that were happening. And our thing was, we're trying to make everybody sound their best. But I remember with Janet, she said, I said it earlier, she just felt like she was a guest on his record. Because if you think about the key of the song, the lyric, the way that it's sung, all of those things are more Michael than Janet. So our job as producers was really to bring Janet, to make her a part of it and make it seamless. And I think we were able to do that. But that was the challenge. Because the choices we would have made would have probably been different choices if it had totally been left up to us which song was going to be or which track it was going to be. We would have found something that was a little more compatible for both of them. But, Janet came through, of course, as she always does. So it worked out.
Yeah, I mean, you guys, yes, everyone acquitted themselves very well on that production and that song. It is amazing. Now, Jimmy, you and Eric actually have something in common. And so I'm going to put Eric a little bit on the spot here.
Oh, no.
Because we were talking about the fact that Scream stalled out at number 5, which sounds ridiculous to say. Stalled out like
stalled out.
Yeah, number 5.
Most people
Yeah.
never get a number 5 hit.
Record-breaking debut at the time.
Right. So I'm curious about what kept it from going to number 1. What were what you have in common is, and encyclopedic knowledge of the Billboard charts. And we've done this. There was a time where we do a game show on Fridays in our office, Jimmy, and we would have people just call in and ask Eric something about the Billboard charts, and he would have the answers more times than not. So do you know what the 4 songs were?
Don't know the form. I'm trying to think when that would have come out. Would have been, I think it would have debuted in June of '95. I see Wild, our producer's already checking me over there. I just found it.
Wait,
This Is How We Do It ended May 27th. June 17th, when Scream debuted, was Bryan Adams' Have You Ever Really Loved a Woman, which was sandwiched between Montel and TLC.
Huh. Okay.
Okay.
Interesting.
Weird.
Bryan
Brian
Adams.
Adams.
Wow.
The Don Juan
Adams.
DeMarco song.
I had forgotten about that.
Jimmy, let me ask quickly, because you said that Janet viewed Scream as Michael's song that she was sort of guesting on. Were there ever talks of Michael hopping on a Janet record?
Not really. Not that I recall.
Okay.
Not that I recall.
I mean, I wouldn't have expected it, but also had there been, I would love to have heard it.
Oh, yeah. So one other thing, Jimmy, that before we let you go, and I got to thank you again for what incredible, the story behind that song and what you guys did in the studio with Michael is just amazing. But when we were talking about you coming on the show, you mentioned something to me about this date that we are recording this, which is June 25th, the 15th anniversary of Michael's death. But there are some other things about June 25th. This date just keeps popping up in your life. And I didn't want to let you go before we acknowledge this.
Yeah, the 25th of June is kind of important. Well, it is the release of the Purple Rain album.
Yes.
40 years ago today.
40 years ago today. It was the birthday of George Michael.
Who you produced Monkey for.
Who we did Monkey for.
Number one hit.
Story, definitely a number 1 hit, but the story behind that was, quickly, he asked us to do a remix of the song. When we redid the song, he said, I got to sing it. I got to re-sing it now to the new track. And so we went to LA to do it. My partner, Terry, brought a girlfriend of his, and who then brought a girlfriend of hers. And we came to the studio, hung out. We ended up getting married. And 30 years ago today, on this date, June 25th, we got married.
Wow.
Happy anniversary.
It's my wedding anniversary.
So you guys met. So June 25th is George Michael's birthday, but you meet when you're recording his lyrics, his vocals for Monkey. Yep. And then did you intentionally do it on the 25th?
No, we had no idea that there was even a correlation between the two. And somebody mentioned it to us, because we just mentioned, June 25th is our anniversary, and somebody said, "Oh, that's George Michael's birthday." It is.
There's something there.
We told George too when we saw him a few years later after we recorded the song. I think we went to his concert and stuff, his tour that he was doing, the Faith tour, and I think we mentioned to him though, you're the reason we met, because he didn't show up to a session, and I said, when you didn't show up to the session, we ended up going out, and that's how we met. And he went,
That was it?
He was so impressed.
Oh my God.
Impressed.
Yeah.
So he didn't send you any spectacular wedding gift?
Yeah, no, nothing like that. He did send it. What he did send us though was really cool though. I remember when we did the project, he sent us, and I have it sitting at my studio. He sent us portable DAT players. If anybody remembers DATs, the little kind of mini cassettes that were digital.
Right.
He sent us portable players so we could have those anywhere, because they're usually these kind of big decks that go in your studio, but he had a portable one, and he sent us two. He sent Terry and me both, each of them. It was so cool. He was great. I was so happy when he went into Rock Hall too. I was campaigning behind the scenes.
Well, and you too. What, 2 years ago you were inducted? So congratulations on that.
Yes.
Also long overdue.
Yeah, that was a wonderful thing.
Well, listen.
Yeah. No, I don't think so. I think it was right on time. There's so many deserving people that aren't there yet that need to be in before us. People
you're humble and I'm biased.
Oh man, Jimmy, it has been so great talking to you, man, and thank you for all the music. We've been talking about this for a long time. We're like, we gotta see when we can get Jimmy on to talk about something. We were in our minds, obviously, thinking about Prince and your work, obviously, in Minneapolis with the Time and
Janet.
and Janet and everything. And we're like, well, it'll probably be something Janet or Prince related. And then when we started talking about doing a show for Michael, and I was like, wait a second. There it is. There's our excuse to have Jimmy on. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us and share that story. Really amazing. And wish you the best and happy anniversary to you and Lisa.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the excuse to come on. I always like that, you know.
Yeah,
It's a
Anytime.
great thing.
I mean, believe me, we'll just call
Anytime.
we'll just call you every week. I mean, believe me, we'll find a way to loop you in.
Yeah,
Because if we're talking about a hook, you guys know hooks, so
absolutely.
we can
More
have
hooks
you
in
on
the
every
tackle
time.
box. That's what we used to say.
Yeah.
More hooks in the tackle box. That's what I
I love
saying.
that. Jimmy, thank you so much for being with us. That
Thank
is
you,
going to
guys.
do it for us this week on Get to the Hook. See you next week.